throughout my entire time playing World of Warcraft, I've played basically nothing but warrior in both retail and in classic. Charging into your enemies and yelling directly into their face is awesome. Of course, I've explored other classes as well, like recently I leveled a mage, and yeah, it was fun exploring all the different farms and stuff, but it's just not really me. And even more recently, I started playing a druid, and I can't lie, it's some of the most fun I've ever had in WoW. The idea of being able to transform into a bear or a cat and just claw your enemies until they bleed to death is about as cool as you can get, and I might honestly consider changing my main character. Last time we managed to get to level 30 and unlock what is possibly one of the biggest advantages that Druid has, and that is travel form, allowing the Druid to move 40% faster, and at level 30 that's kind of a big deal. Now the goal for today is to reach level 40, and that is quite a big jump and a lot of XP, mainly because Blizzard thought that it would be a fantastic idea to release Phase 4 4 weeks after they released Phase 3. Not a single clue why, which means I'm running out of time if I want to raid Zul'Gurub as a feral druid. Starting the day, we were of course a little level 30, and I was making my way through the Barrens on my way to the Salt Flats for some questing. Now a lot of people seem to not like the Salt Flats, but personally, I quite like it, because it's a very unique zone, completely flat, giving it this slightly ominous vibe to it. Now the quests here are all very similar and work together nicely, since you're basically running around the zone killing anything that moves. Vultures for their bones, scorpions for their venom, tortoises for their shells, and basilisks for, well, just murder the basilisks because screw them apparently. We're also collecting rocket car parts because this place is also apparently a racetrack of some kind. This place makes no sense. And you know, after that, we do get given another couple of quests, but they are way too high of a level for me. So I turned in all the quests that I had completed and decided that it was time for a little dungeon run to get some quick XP, and landed on Gnomeregan. So I quickly made a little trip to Ironforge in order to collect all of the necessary dungeon quests before making my way to the dungeon entrance. And surprisingly, I do actually get into a group within 5 minutes. So I met up with the team and we began heading down. We began clearing out all of the mobs, and weirdly we actually skipped over doing the tech bot quest, but that's fine I guess. Once we were in the dungeon itself, we actually went down a path that I had never been in before, and began doing a sequence that I think is part of a quest that I wasn't on. We began getting swarmed by a couple of waves of mobs, until eventually a boss by the name of Grubbis came out. And it wasn't particularly difficult, but it was a cool little thing that I hadn't experienced before. We continued clearing our way through the dungeon, going down hallway after hallway that I didn't recognize, since in retail you typically skip most of the dungeon. We then began an escort quest, and unfortunately after escorting this NPC for a solid 5 minutes, apparently it was bugged. But no matter, since we continued our way through the dungeon until we get to the boss, the Viscous Fallout, which is a boss that still exists to this day inside of the retail version of this dungeon. And he dropped the Acidic Walkers, which is a nice piece of loot for the casters. We continue moving upwards in the dungeon in search of the boss Electrocutioner 6000, and of course we get him down nice and easy. Now the next boss is an interesting one, the Crowd Pummeler 960. Now as a feral druid, it does actually drop my Biss weapon, like Biss forever, called the Manual Crowd Pummeler. And when I first heard about this, I thought that this was great, since I could get my Biss weapon at level 30, until I realised that this weapon only has 3 charges. 3 charges that don't replenish themselves, meaning if I want to play a feral druid, then I'm going to be spending a lot of time in this dungeon in the future collecting this weapon. And even if it drops now, its stats are still insanely good for me. But nope, we get some boots. All that was left to do now was to start clearing to the end boss, whilst being careful not to pull the entire dungeon as we do it. And then it was time for Mechgineer Thermoplug, and originally Originally, I thought that we might struggle a little with this boss since he's a little bit of a higher level than us, but we did end up coming out on top. And that was it, we had successfully completed a run of Gnomeregan, which got us up to level 31. I think it's time we do a little bit of questing now, and after not so carefully picking out the zone I wanted to quest in, I settled for Stranglethorn Vale. So I took a bird to Duskwood and began running towards the jungle, and almost immediately after arriving, I began picking up some quests and began heading deeper into the jungle to meet up with some blokes gathered around a fire so that I could pick up even more quests, and then got stuck straight into questing. Now, I don't know about you, but I absolutely love Stranglethorn Vale, because it is a beautiful zone with mostly simple quests. Plus, you occasionally get some nice PvP here, even though most of the time you just get jumped by a full party of level 60s. Now, there wasn't an absolute ton of quests that I could do here, since I did come here earlier than I should have, but there was enough for now. I first got started taking out all of the young Stranglethorn tigers and young panthers. I then went and did the first few quests of the Curzon questline, where we have to basically kill a load of people and take certain items off of their corpses, and doing that got us to level 32. I then once again made a quick trip to Stormwind to visit my trainer, since at level 32 we learn a very important ability called Ferocious Bite, which is basically the only usable ability to spend my combo points, since Rip really just isn't worth it. And then of course I went back to Stranglethorn Vale to finish up the quests there, once again making me kill tigers and panthers, basically the exact same as before, except this time we're also killing raptors. Fantastic. And that was it for Stranglethorn Vale, because we weren't high enough for any of the other quests, but I still wanted to come back later and do more, because this zone is awesome. So once again, I decided that I wanted to do a dungeon, and thought that we could do a little Razorfen Kraul run for some more quick XP. Now, Razorfen Kraul isn't the most exciting dungeon, but you know, it's nice for a little change, and this would only be my second time ever running it. Now, at the start of the dungeon, we were actually still waiting on the healer getting here, so I took the role of the healer for the first 5 minutes, and I gotta say, it's a little weird. I don't think I've ever healed, like ever. Never in retail or in classic, but we start clearing our way to the first boss, which we take down pretty quickly for only 4 people. We then move to the other side of the room to take down the other little boss that's tucked away in the corner, and after that the healer arrived, which means I could resume my captivities. We then make it to the next boss, Overlord Ramtusk. Now, I'm still not entirely sure if there's something specific you've got to do with this boss, but for some reason I remember wiping on this boss the first time I did it, but we took him down fairly easily this time. After that, we continue moving through the dungeon and into the little cave system, where we fight the big boar boss Agathelos the Raging, who only dropped a pair of crappy green legs. And then once again we start clearing our way to the last boss, Chargla Razorflank, who dropped the shield. Now, I actually thought that this is where the dungeon ends, but turns out if you drop down behind Chargla, there was actually an entire escort quest to do that I had no idea about. We speak to this little goblin to get it started, and he of course begins to move around at the speed of a snail, whilst we are clearing loads and loads of boars. And to be honest, there really isn't any significance to the quest. It's pretty standard as far as escort quests go, but it does end right at the exit of the dungeon, so we might as well do it anyway. And that was it. We had completed a run of Razorfen Kraul. Now, I actually went back in for another run of Razorfen Kraul because I really just wanted to get some XP, and we did all the same things as last time, except I did not have to heal this time around, and even this time around we ended up dropping down the back and doing the little escort quest, so I have no idea what happened last time. And that's when I remembered a place that is canon in every WoW character's journey, a place worse than hell itself. Scarlet Monastery. With little options left for grinding levels, I reluctantly began making my way over to Scarlet Monastery and braced myself for the next 2 days, because I was about to run Scarlet Monastery a lot. To begin my plunge into insanity, I started with a graveyard run that I ended up tanking. Now, I don't really like graveyard that much. It's a bit too simple and it has that dark and spooky aesthetic that I keep talking about. As for loot, there really isn't anything. The only thing would be a ring from a rare mob, but it's unlikely that we will even see the mob. After only a few minutes of starting the dungeon, we begin making our way into the dark catacomb type thing, and we are met face to face with the only boss in the dungeon, Blood Mage Thalnos. Although granted, he looks kind of epic. After that, I decided to do yet another run of graveyard, this time with a full party. I then of course decided to do Scarlet Library, which I think is the only one of the 4 dungeons that have more than 1 bosses. The first being Houndmaster Loxy. Plus, the other good thing about this dungeon is I believe there's a guaranteed 2 herb spawns. The second boss is Arcanus Doan. Now, he's kind of an interesting one since he's one of the few bosses with an actual mechanic. A simple LOS mechanic that doesn't even one-shot you. But again, there's literally 0 loot to get from here for us. My party then wanted a graveyard run, so I stuck around for the XP, and once again, back to library. And that was kind of me set for the day, running back and forth between library and graveyard, farming out as much XP as I could, all the way up until I was high enough to run armory. And armory is the melee dungeon, providing some of the absolute best melee leveling gear, none of which I can equip. Now, you know, I don't mind armory, but don't get me wrong, it's still incredibly boring. But I think it's definitely one of the best for XP at this level, and I have fond memories of farming this dungeon, because it was like my first real grind in WoW Classic when I did it on my warrior. It took us around 10 to 15 minutes to clear all the way to the end boss, Herod, and he does also have a mechanic, surprisingly, which is of course the same ability that is on Ravager, where he spins and deals massive AoE damage, basically Bladestorm before Bladestorm. And then I went for 3 more library runs and another armory run, which got us up to level 36, and at this point I was absolutely sick of Scarlet Monastery, gagging at the thought of having to do one more run of this incredibly boring dungeon. So I of course wanted to do some questing and decided to do some Arathi Highlands. Now there definitely isn't an absolute horde of quests to do since a significant chunk of them are elite quests, which I definitely cannot solo. I started out by doing the Troll Kill and Collect quest, making us collect 10 tusks and 4 pouches, but we also get to sneak around in a cave on the hunt for a shadow knife, which is pretty cool. I then ran up to the back of the zone to kill 10 Syndicate Highwaymen and 6 Syndicate Mercenaries, but unfortunately that was it because I forgot to record the Elemental quest and the Knoll quest, so I decided to play some Oaths for some unknown reason before making my way into Stranglethorn Vale to continue where I left off before, since I was now a higher level. I first started by killing all 10 of the Lashtail Raptors, and then for some unknown reason, I went all the way back to Scarlet Monastery and did 8 armory runs. What the hell is wrong with me? But eventually I returned to Stranglethorn Vale, but this time headed to Booty Bay to pick up a chunk of quests there, and started by doing the quest where we have to kill basilisks and collect 10 singing crystal shards. Now the weird thing about this quest is that the drop rate for the item seemed to be extremely low, and the quest ended up taking like 40 minutes to do fully. I also decided to get the Jungle Stalker kills out of the way whilst I still had my world buff active. I also paid a visit to Venture Cove to collect Tumbled Crystal, which was significantly easier than the Basilisk Crystals, and then went on another murderous rampage against trolls so that I could take their ears, which took us up to level 39. Now that left us in a little bit of a rut because we weren't able to do any of the other quests in Stranglethorn Vale, so I either had to go back to Scarlet Monastery or head into the Blasted Lands to do what little quests the zone offers. So I entered into the Blasted Lands and immediately ran to this hole in the ground that's filled with dwarves to pick up the first quest, which we simply need to hand in to a guy that is just up the hill, and I also accepted a buzzard kill quest from him. I then also picked up an ogre kill and collect quest that I decided to do first since there was kind of buzzards everywhere anyway, so I could just do that at the same time. Now the ogres was somewhat of a tough one since they were a little bit higher than me and I did not have a rallying cry of the Dragon Slayer, but we did get it done in the end. Also shout out to this guy. As for the buzzard quest, I found this little area that had the bones of some giant creature with tons of buzzards circling around it, which got the quest done. And that kind of left us in the same position as before, because we were already done with the quest here. But at least Alderman is literally right around the corner. Oh, for fuck's sake. Yeah, I went back to Scarlet Monastery again. This time for a cathedral run and 2 library runs, which got us to level 40, which means that we had achieved the goal for today. But there is still one more very important thing that we needed to do, one of the biggest leveling milestones, and that is of course to purchase our mount, which I have decided to call Cat, which means I am a cat called Cat riding a cat called Cat, and next to Cat the cat and Cat the cat is Cat the cat's pet cat. I think I might be losing it slightly. Hope you all enjoyed today's video because I enjoyed making it. Remember, if you're not subbed, then please feel free to hit that little button because it costs you nothing and it means the world to me. I'm still enjoying Druid, definitely going to be taking it into the end game, so look forward to that. I'm still working on a new mage video. It's taking a bit longer than expected, but should hopefully be out soon-ish. Also remember, if you have any kind of specific content that you want to see, then drop it in the comments. Anyway, I think I have yapped long enough. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all later.